Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we are here for another week of the racing debrief. Of course, it's Watkins Glen. So we got Xfinity and we got Cup to talk about. Of course, there's a lot that happened in the Xfinity race. Cup race had a little bit less action, we'll say. And then we'll talk a little bit about the playoffs going into Daytona, cutoff race. See who's going to make the playoffs. One spot remains, so we'll dive into that. First, let's take a look at the Xfinity race. So, there was a little more action in the Xfinity race. Ty Gibbs kind of just pulled away and dominated most of it. But throughout the field, there was a lot of action, passe, movement throughout the field that we didn't really see in the Cup race. So, again, interesting racing without the stages. That part definitely makes it a little bit more unique. Towards the end of the race, you're starting to see maybe some questions of fuel. You know, who's going to make it on fuel? Because, again, there wasn't necessarily that many cautions. You had, you know, one or two, but it was pretty much just caution-free. You get to the end, somebody crashed. I believe that was the one coming to the pit. Somebody crashed? I don't know. Somebody crashed during the race. Relatively late into it. They set up a caution. And then you had another crash coming out of the bus stop going to the carousel. That set up overtime again. So backing up a little bit on that first restart, right at the end of the race, Ty Gibbs and Sam Mayer had a little bit of contact. Of course, as you'd expect, those two have always had contact, always had issues. Throughout their career. Whenever they get near each other, something's bound to happen. We've seen it earlier this year. At, was it Charlotte? Maybe? I know there's one of them that they had some contact earlier this year. Of course, they had their issues last year together in Xfinity at Martinsville. Of course, they had their issues in the lower levels of ARCA as well. So, they've always had some issues between them. So, first restart, they go up the hill a little bit. Ty Gibbs makes some contact with Sam Mayer. Nothing too wild. Of course, Sam Mayer's heated on the radio. Essentially says he's going to crash him. We get another restart, and he just sends it in the corner and cleans out Ty Gibbs and Austin Hill. He has a little bit of a lockup, but, I mean, he was going to do it either way, so the lockup doesn't really justify it. I mean, that's just what happens in these lower levels. You know, you get these guys that are desperate to try to get a win. They don't win often. So, you know, somebody like Sam Mayer, who I don't think is as good as a lot of the drivers in the field that he races around. I mean, he's not as good as Ty Gibbs. He's not as good as Austin Hill. He's not as good as Justin Allgaier. You know, there's a lot of these drivers that are in that level. Josh Berry's another one that are better than Sam Mayer. So he doesn't really have an opportunity to win many races. So when he sees an opportunity and, you know, can take some people out, why not do it? That's my take on it. I mean, Sam Mayer's not really a driver that I've necessarily liked. Even the first time I ever seen him race, there's just something about him I wasn't a fan of. It was the truck and the ARCA like doubleheader that he won. It was 2019. He won both of them. Only ARCA race I've ever watched as well. Keep that in mind. But I don't know. I just didn't like him that day, and kind of since then I didn't like him. And then, you know, I'm a fan of Ty Gibbs, so it kind of goes into that as well. Like, just not really liking him as a driver. But I mean, I don't know. I just feel like he's not it. So, yeah, I think Ty Gibbs had a good reaction in the interview. You know, where he says Sam Mayer's got more starts and he's got more wins. So, you know, there's that. Obviously, Ty Gibbs raced on Sunday. Sam Mayer doesn't. So there's that. I mean, I don't really think that it ultimately matters that much. It's an Xfinity race. Sam Mayer, you know, hasn't really shown to dominate a race yet. He hasn't shown that he's got that ability, even given the fact of which team he's driving for. You know, he doesn't have that ability that I think some of the other drivers do. So, I'm going to leave it at that. I think Austin Hill had a solid interview. It wasn't shown on TV, but I seen it on Twitter. Him kind of saying how he didn't appreciate getting taken out in that, and he's gonna have to race him differently. So, Austin Hill will. He's that type of guy. If he's gonna say that, he's gonna do it. So, there's that. Onto the Cup race. The Cup race, there was a little bit of intrigue going into it, of course. A lot of drivers that are good at road courses still need a win to make the playoffs. Ty Gibbs, Chase Elliott, Daniel Suarez, Alex Bowman, all guys that are solid at road courses, could use a win to make the playoffs. Pretty much all of them need a win. Ty Gibbs is kind of in a if everything goes right point scenario, and was going into the race and still is. The other three really needed to win. But one of those races that comes down to win it, make the playoffs. Kind of that last shot before you go to a wild card at Daytona. And that didn't really happen. It was kind of, I wouldn't say it was boring. I think I've seen a little overreaction online saying it was the worst race of the year, worst race ever, whatever. I don't think it's the worst race ever. I don't know what would be the worst race of the year. I guess action-wise it has to be kind of up there. But if I looked through it, I could probably figure out what I thought was the worst race, but I don't really need to. Worst race of the year isn't something I really seek out. So, Watkins Glen, I think it kind of showed a little bit of, what has been discussed before with these cars and how they're built and how they race. And I think that's something about them that, we can discuss, because when you look at something like the short tracks, again, the bigger brakes, the bigger tires, like, those are big factors that hurt the racing. And short tracks and road courses race similarly. So, what NASCAR's done is taken and built a car for road racing. The issue is, what made road racing good was the fact that the cars were not built for road racing. They were built for the mile and a halves. They were built for super speedways. So they tried to do something where they thought, okay, road courses are doing great. Everybody's liking them. Let's make a car for road racing. The issue is, again, what made road racing good was the fact that the car sucked at road racing. And by that I mean, it wasn't built for it. The brakes were too small. It wasn't built for it. So it's not designed to race those types of tracks. Again, that car was meant for going around Texas, boring everybody to death. That's what it's meant for. You put the giant ass spoiler on the back that's like this big, and then nobody can pass. That's what the last car was good at. So when you go to a track that's a road course or a short track, where the brakes are too small for what they're doing, and the tires don't have as much surface to grip the track, it works, because you're having less contact as you're going through, winding turns and up hills and things like that. So that's where the last car was really, really good. It was by the fact that it wasn't designed for that type of racing. So when you put something that's designed to be specifically for it and say, make better racing, it actually hurts the product. Because again, what they needed for the road courses was guys going in the corner and getting it wrong. Now they're not going to get it wrong because the brakes are way bigger. Or there's more tire to touch the ground, more surface area. So, again, I think that something like that has hurt road courses. Because I'm a big fan of road courses. They're one of my favorite types of racing. I mean, there's not really, with the current car making mile and a halfs better, there's not really something I'm like, oh man, I'm disappointed about what track's coming up this week. That used to be the case when we go to mile and a halfs every goddamn week. It was like, okay, give me another short track eventually. Give me one of our 3 road courses. Give me a super speedway. But now you have almost every week that you're going to get something good. But I think that, again, we got to look at making these cars worse for those tracks. And again, I think the brakes and the tires are the main focus. Again, there's other parts of it. How does the diffuser make it work? How does shifting, having that extra 5th gear? Of course, before you had 4 gears. Now you can go up to 5. And again, the gears are meant, it's just a little lever that you just push forward or pull backwards. Or before, you had to find the spot. And that was another part of it, was when you had the shifting, you had to get it right. You had to go 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Like, you had to get that into the spot. Now you just push it forward. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm fine with the shifter the way it is. But just having that 5th gear and having that element that, as long as you don't pull it backwards and you mean to go forward, you're not going to mess up a shift. Where before you'd have guys messing up shifts, or you'd have, again, you'd have less gears to get to. You'd only have 4. Now you got 5. So I think those types of things hurt the road course racing. It hurts the product. And I think we've seen that when most of the guys that were in the front were running these same exact lap times within a 10th or 2 of each other. And they were going around the track, nobody making any progress on each other. You just had William Byron, Denny Hamlin, who was 3rd, Christopher Bell, AJ Allmendinger, Ty Gibbs, all just going in order. Nobody changed position for the last 30 laps, something like that. Whenever the last caution came out, it's kind of it. You could say Denny Hamlin was slowing down some other guys, but again, they couldn't get by him. They didn't have enough speed. They didn't have enough, ability to go for it, because you have so much grip. You can go so deep. You can brake so late. Everybody can do it. There's no advantage. There's no way of trying to send it. If everybody can send it every lap, you can't be making an aggressive move when you don't have that ability, because everybody has that ability. It doesn't come down to, I feel confident I can make the car go in the corner, and I can brake a little later than this guy, because everybody can brake as late as possible. It doesn't come down to the element of who's brave enough to go in the corner. It's just, let's go around the track. Which really, really sucks, because Watkins Glen is one of the best tracks in NASCAR. It's always sold out. It's been sold out for, 6 or 8 years in a row now? One of my favorite tracks to race in a video game, whether it is NASCAR games when it occasionally works, playing in Gran Turismo, playing people's interpretation of it in GTA. Like, every single way that I can race Watkins Glen, I want to race it. That track is absolutely amazing. And unfortunately, this week's race was not good. Again, not every track has had a brilliant race, but I don't really think last year we had a good race. It's memorable because Chase Elliott fans need to cope. They need to cope harder. They're still hurt because Kyle Larson made a move that cost Chase Elliott the chance to win. That's the only reason I remember last year. I remember being very, very bored watching last year's race. This car is not good at Watkins Glen. Last year, the only excitement we got was the very end of the race, where Kyle Larson's on the inside and says, I'm going a little deep because I have to try to make a move. And it affected Chase Elliott, so Chase Elliott fans cannot stop complaining, and haven't stopped complaining for the last year about it. And I don't know. That's the only reason that we talk about Watkins Glen from last year. That's it. Because they can't shut up. They can't deal with the fact that their driver got passed. Right? So we look at, how to fix it. Again, it comes back to the philosophy of the car. Can you make a different tire? And can you change the brakes, right? Is NASCAR going to change that? I don't know. I feel like they put a lot of time and development into the next-gen car to have a lot of issues. There's a lot of things with this car that it seems to be a problem. It's one of those things that it's honestly amazing that it came out when it did in 2022, considering it was supposed to come out in 2021. Don't forget that car was supposed to launch a year earlier. Granted, they took a lot of time off developing it during COVID, but it was still like halfway there in, middle of 2020. And the fact that there's issues, you see it less now, but there was definitely issues with safety with the front and rear clip of it, and the damage that was being taken. And then again, the racing product that you see at road courses, at short tracks, at super speedways, the only track that a race is good at is intermediates. Super speedways, nobody can really get a run in the packs. Short tracks and road courses, nobody can pass. So the next-gen car has some serious problems that need to be addressed. And it feels like we've had this discussion before, and you watch other, channels, people talk about the same thing. Whether it's, NASCAR drivers on podcasts talking about it, whether it's other YouTubers, whether it's here, everybody talks about this car having those problems. And hopefully it's something that they can get fixed sooner than later. Overall, I was disappointed by Watkins Glen. Disappointed by what we've seen. Now let's look at the playoff standings here. Of course, William Byron got his 5th win. His first road course win. It's been a while since I've seen number 24 win on a road course. So let's go to the standings here. And playoffs, of course, with no new winner. Brad Keselowski and Kevin Harvick both make it in on points. So we go to the cut line. Right now, Bubba Wallace is 32 points in front of Ty Gibbs. I guess Daniel Suarez does have a slight chance to point his way in, being down 43 points. Basically for Suarez or Gibbs to point their way in, though, Bubba Wallace needs to crash at like the first 5 laps. Basically before stage 1, or not score stage points, and then have them both score relatively high. So Bubba Wallace is in a solid spot, but an early crash or not getting stage points could severely hurt his playoff chances. Again, everybody else is in. So anybody can make it in, though, on a win. Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs, Daniel Suarez, AJ Allmendinger, Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, Austin Cindric, Justin Haley, Ryan Preece, Eric Almirola, Todd Gilliland, Corey LaJoie, Eric Jones, Austin Dillon, Harrison Burton, Chase Briscoe, Ty Dillon, all guys that can make it in to the playoffs. Of course, those are the ones that have done every race and are eligible for the playoffs. So any of those guys win, they're in the playoffs. The only way that it comes down to, of course, a point scenario is any of the previous 13 winners winning, or Brad Keselowski and Kevin Harvick, who are already in, winning. I think it's going to come out of the same drivers. I think Bubba Wallace is good at those tracks. Ty Gibbs was solid at them before. Suarez. Allmendinger was good at it in Xfinity. Alex Bowman tends to qualify well. Austin Cindric and Justin Haley have won there, so 2 of the 3 wins by Eric Almirola are at those types of tracks. Austin Dillon, he's got a win there. So there's a few guys that can win at those tracks, but again, it comes down to whoever's there at the end. But I don't know, I think Bubba Wallace and Ty Gibbs are still who it comes down to. I think one of those two would still make the playoffs. So the thing that I think is interesting is when we look at the drivers' standings, the actual points, without the playoffs, grid. this is like the first year really that we haven't seen anybody wild get a win from outside the bottom and knock somebody out. Because looking at it, of the top 16 in actual points, 15 of them have made the playoffs or are in the playoffs currently. The only guy below 16th that's in is Michael McDowell, who's 17th, and he's only 5 points difference with Ty Gibbs. So, it's close. It's very close this year. I think that other years we've seen guys that are like 23rd in points get a win and knock some people out. I mean, last year, Martin Truex was 4th in points and missed the playoffs. So, not seeing anything wild like that this year. Again, in actual points, Ty Gibbs is 16th, and he's 17th in the playoffs. So, that's all you see. But, yeah, that's going to do it. We'll see you guys next week. We're going to review Daytona for Xfinity and for the Cup Series. And we'll see you guys in the next one.